everyone, and thanks for watching this presentation. We know there's been a lot of discussion in the community about the budget for the town and schools, the costs of needed capital projects, and in particular, the estimated cost for the new elementary school project to replace the Elmwood School. We wanted to take this opportunity to discuss those estimated costs, the reasons behind them, and how we, as the Elementary School Building Committee, are working to mitigate those costs as much as possible. I'm John Graziano. I am chair of the Elementary School Building Committee, and with me today I have several other members of the committee.
I'm Bill Flannery from the Appropriation Committee.
I'm Tiffany Ostrander. I'm the vice chair of the Building Committee.
Carol Cavanaugh, the superintendent of schools.
And Susan Rothermick, Director of Finance and Operations.
We're going to try to cover as many topics as possible in this presentation that we think are relevant to the questions people might have around the cost of the project. But certainly if there are things that we don't cover, please feel free to reach out to the committee directly. Dr. Cavanaugh, could you take us through how we started to work on this project to replace the Elmwood School?
Sure, John, thank you. In 2021, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or what we call the MSBA, invited Hopkinton to partner with them in replacing or renovating the Elmwood School, which was built in 1965 and currently educates all of Hopkinton's second and third graders. Following that invitation, Hopkinton formed the Elementary School Building Committee, which again we fondly refer to as the ESBC, and we hired a project management firm, Vertex, and a design firm, Perkins Eastman, to begin analyzing the options for upgrading the current Elmwood School while keeping town priorities at the forefront of our decision making. Hopkinton town priorities include designing a facility to meet enrollment needs and educational needs that's cost effective and acknowledges town traffic challenges. And we are aware that town traffic challenges are at the forefront of people's thinking. It was also determined that to best impact the current space challenges across the district, the new building would be built to include all second, third, and fourth graders in Hopkinton. The committee has worked to select a preferred site and schematic design and will now spend the next few months working on the design of the school with an expectation that we will have a special town meeting in November to approve the project.
Thank you. Tiffany, the committee has settled on a site they think is best for the new school. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So our committee convened starting in July of 2021. And over our time together, we've analyzed over 40 parcels of land, both privately and publicly owned, at least 12 acres in total that could fit a new school, and have reviewed a large number of schematic options. And the Elementary School Building Committee team has determined that the best option to solve the space and modernization challenges presented by the current Elmwood School was to build a replacement building on the town-owned land on Hayden Row, adjacent to the current Marathon School. Our analysis included looking at several different ways in which we could use the existing Elmwood site, including renovating the existing building or building a new building on the site. We also considered that a significant cost impact to building on the Elmwood site would include the swing space that would be necessary for us to loan or purchase so that school could remain in session during construction. And we also faced the challenge at the Elmwood site that this would in fact extend the duration of the project, which could also lead to a larger cost impact. Ultimately, the team decided and determined that the constraints of the Elmwood site were too limiting and wouldn't allow us to build the school building we need to deliver the educational experience for our students and meet the increased enrollment demands that we'll see over time.
Great. Bill, our focus here is on cost. So can you outline what the current cost estimates for this project are and what's driving it?
Sure. The proposed project is expected to cost somewhere between $160 and $170 million before any reimbursement from the MSBA. Now, the cost projections represents a significant price increase compared to the recently completed Marathon School, which came in at around $42 million. Obviously, a factor impacting the cost is that this school will house an entire additional grade, and our partners at Vertex and Perkins Eastman have outlined other factors as well that will have some impact on driving up the cost. One would be green technology. In the past few years, HVAC systems and other technologies that you would use in a building like this have improved tremendously. And we have a wide range of options for this building to ensure that our building operates as close to net zero as possible. Now, some of these technologies have much larger upfront costs, even though they will save the town money over time, as they'll make up for the operation of less expensive over the years. Now, we're going to be very careful to weigh these options to ensure that we get the best value out of those decisions around green technology. And we're also targeting this new school to have a lower energy use intensity than the Marathon School has, and our decision will be guided by the entire life cycle cost, not just the upfront costs, so the town can realize those savings over the more efficient buildings. Building size is another factor that they have to put into play here. You know, adding an additional grade, this building is obviously going to be much larger than the Marathon School, but it's larger in size and cost because of the growing enrollment issues that we're trying to deal with. Currently, Elmwood School was designed to house 650 students in the two grades of 2-3. Based on the MSBA's enrollment projections, this new school is designed to accommodate 1,195 students across 3 grades, 2, 3, and 4. And finally, another factor that I think we're all dealing with, that is inflation. The construction industry has seen inflation occur at even higher rates than other industries. Among those factors include scarcity of labor and also material shortages because of the supply chain disruptions that we've been hearing about for a couple of years. If you go back, the Marathon School, which opened in 2019, cost about $425 a square foot to construct. Based on recent school projects here in Massachusetts, it's expected this project will cost around $900 per square foot. And this is consistent with estimates that most construction firms are giving us, that when they compare when Marathon was built compared to when we may start construction, it makes sense, and these estimates are coming in very similar.
Thanks, Bill. Susan, we've mentioned the Mass School Building Authority, or MSBA, a couple of times. Can you talk about their process in partnering with us to help on the cost?
Sure. So one thing that's important to remember is the MSBA is a competitive funding program. So grants are based on the need and urgency, and they are validated by the MSBA. So Hopkinton was invited into this competitive process. These capital funds are targeted to communities that are ready to make that financial commitment. So the MSBA will reimburse the town for a portion of this project as long as it is built to accommodate the MSBA approved enrollment and the educational program for Hopkinton. And while the MSBA will give us a set reimbursement rate, they don't reimburse for all costs, and some categories are capped. So all told, our effective rate for this project could be around 25%. So that would mean that the total cost for the town of Hopkinton could be $120 million. However, when we go to town meeting in the fall of '23, we will vote for the entire cost of the project, as Mr. Flannery spoke about, whatever that lands, where those decisions somewhere. The highest cost right now we're looking at is $170 million. As those decisions are made over the next couple months, that will define what that total cost will be. So, and then the other piece to keep in mind is the actual borrowing that will take place over a number of years as construction moves along, and the MSBA reimburses the town of Hopkinton over time. So that gets into a little bit of the tax impact. So the tax impact will happen and change over time based on the borrowings that the town makes over that construction period. So as Mr. Flannery also spoke about in terms of the cost impact and the change of inflation, because of this, the MSBA has actually put a pause on their accelerated repair program and is really focusing all of their revenue stream to the core program, of which that is what Hopkinton is participating in. They're also inviting fewer projects into that core program because the inflation has driven so high recently. So we're fortunate to be accepted into this program because it does save the community a lot of money in terms of this project. Now, the MSBA only allows 120 days to secure that positive vote, and that is why we're looking for this vote to be in November of '23. If there is a failed vote, we would then have to go back to submit to the MSBA through another statement of interest and wait for a second invitation. And there are a lot of requests for capital projects, and again, being a competitive program, this could be a costly waiting time for the town of Hopkinton.
Thanks. John, even with the MSBA reimbursement, there's still a large cost for the residents of Hopkinton. What are the factors that will determine the final cost to the town?
Sure. So the ESBC is taking this cost issue very seriously. We recognize that while this is an important project and Hopkinton is very proud of its schools and wants to have the best facilities, that there's a lot going on in town. There are a lot of places where we need to spend money and we need to mitigate the economic impact on our residents. So we're looking at a number of different things. The first one is, as Bill mentioned, the HVAC and mechanical systems. It's great news that there has been so much improvement in technology. It's going to allow us not only to be more environmentally sound when we build this building, but also reduce the long-term operating costs that are associated with a building of this size. That being said, while we want to be environmentally conscious, we are really going to be looking at the full life cycle cost so that we understand if we are spending more money up front to do certain things around green technology, that the town will see the benefits of that in the operational cost of the building over its life. We will be having discussions about that throughout the spring and summer and really invite the public to listen to those discussions so that we can be as transparent as possible and people can understand the savings that are going to come with that. We're also currently engaged with Eversource and through the Mass Save program to take advantage of some of their energy efficient reimbursement programs for some of the decisions that we're making. And we're exploring what's available to this project under the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, which has a lot of benefits for green technology as well. Susan talked about the MSBA reimbursement process, and maximizing that is going to be a huge focus of the committee as well. One way to do this is to focus mostly on reimbursable costs, which generally speaking are costs that contribute directly to the educational model for second, third, and fourth graders. To give you an example of this, the MSBA recognizes the importance of things like playgrounds and recess fields at an elementary school. And so those fit into the reimbursable categories for parts of this building. The site that we have gives us the freedom if we wanted to put in a large field that could even be utilized by high school teams in the afternoon, which would certainly have benefits in some ways to the town and the schools. But the MSBA does not recognize that as part of the elementary school project, and therefore that would not be reimbursable. Those are exactly the kind of costs that we don't want to add to this school so that we can, again, maximize that reimbursement we can receive from the MSBA. The last piece is design. So there are a lot of aspects to the design of the building that will help drive this cost. We're evaluating the best ways to engage with our contractors and look at building features like the exterior, the outside building envelope, and features of design that could either add or reduce cost. Already in the schematic design, the approaches that the district and our professionals have gone through around right-sizing the square footage of the building and efficient design are driving a per-student total project cost increase that is looking already about 20% less than we would have expected for the natural inflationary environment. So there are a lot of aspects to the design where we can gain efficiencies that will help minimize the cost. Bill, we talked about how many options for sites that the ESBC looked at. Obviously, there had to be some variance in cost among those sites. How does this cost compare to the other options?
Sure, John. I think when looking at the cost of the new building, it's important to note that there was no option available that was significantly less expensive without compromising the educational delivery. In order to accommodate the projected 1,195 students at the school, we require 176,000 square feet, so that all the new construction options came in relatively similar in terms of projected cost. So we absolutely did look at renovating Elmwood, but a simple renovation was not an option, given that the larger student population we are currently experiencing here in town. A renovation project would require an expansion project as well. And as you can see by the cost estimates on the screen, a renovation and expansion would cost almost as much as new construction that we are proposing. And it also contains some complexities in this kind of a project. First, the project would take much longer, as we'll be working on a school while students are in the school. Also, in order to stage construction, we would need to rent additional space for parking and possibly some temporary classrooms. The cost of this rental would not be eligible for reimbursement, so the town would bear the entire cost. Factoring that in and netting in the MSBA reimbursement, doing a renovation and addition would likely cost more than our proposed option. So when you combine the constraints of the existing building, the site limitations that Tiffany mentioned earlier, along with the new grade configuration of grades 2, 3, and 4 that was approved by the school committee to help with these capacity issues, using the Elmwood location was no longer a viable option.
Thanks. Carol and Susan, we've talked a lot about inflation, we've talked a lot about green technology, but probably the biggest thing that's driving both the grade configuration and the cost estimate is something that I know people have heard a lot about, which is our incredibly increasing student population. Can you talk about that and its impact?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about the enrollment growth. So as you know, due to Hopkinton's immense growth over the last 5 years, we've seen a large increase in student enrollment within the Hopkinton Public Schools. This has made our school buildings more crowded and has driven class sizes above our school committee guidelines, resulting in classes that in many cases exceed 24 students. In some cases, we have 26 and 27 students in a classroom. And those numbers are really challenging at the elementary level. Our enrollment numbers continue to outpace even the most aggressive projections, and I think that's what folks are seeing on the screen right now. Currently, Hopkinton's total student count is 131 students ahead of the projections for the end of the 2023 school year, and we're already 49 students ahead of where we'd be at the end of 2024. So as you can see, our enrollment continues to track, sort of way ahead of where we thought we would be, but I think for the first time we have a better handle on enrollment growth using two demographers.
And I can speak a little bit further. As we were looking at the process of being invited into the MSBA program for Elmwood, the bigger question was district-wide. How do we address district-wide and make sure that we are making decisions that are not just one-time only? So we used Perkin Eastman, who is our architect, to do a district-wide campus study and look at all of our buildings with this enrollment growth and where are the deficits district-wide and how do we plan for those moving forward. And that study helped to inform the school committee in making a decision for the Elmwood School to be a grade 2, 3, 4. And what that did is that alleviated some of the pressure in the upstream growth as students matriculate through the system. So when you look at the district-wide study, there is capacity issues at every building. Pulling the 4th grade into the Elmwood School alleviated some of that upstream capacity issues. That allows us to pull 6th grade down into the Hopkins School, and then the square footage that is freed up in the middle school could then be shared between the middle school and the high school. So the end result is all of these additional building projects that could be out in the future. This allowed us some, cost effectiveness of moving some of this or a lot of this construction to be reimbursed by the MSBA. So anyone who has watched the capital planning process that is before every town board, there are a lot of discussions on these building projects that are out in the horizon. And it really is to address the enrollment growth that Dr. Kavanaugh spoke about.
Okay, thanks. Bill, we've talked a lot about 120 to 130 million as the post reimbursement cost, but I think that's really difficult for people sometimes to understand what it means to them. So can you talk a little bit about what the impact to property taxes will be and how we're going to fund this?
Sure. Well, as was mentioned earlier, we're going to, and you'll see on the screen here in a moment, we're going to be targeting a November special town meeting where the citizens will be asked to approve the funding for Elmwood replacement. And even though the MSBA will be reimbursing part of the project, we will be required to appropriate the full cost of the project. When it comes to borrowing, though, we'll only need to borrow the town's share of the cost, which is expected to be, again, John, somewhere in that $120 to $130 million. And it won't be borrowed all at once, as those costs are spread out over the project. So using a reasonable model, and these are estimates of how this would get borrowed, and taking into account the current interest rate environment, which could change, a household today valued at $775,000 could expect to see an average of $885 annually in their property taxes to pay for this project over the next 30 years. However, it's important to note that the peak tax impact will occur in fiscal year 2027. That's when the last round of financing will occur. That particular household at $775,000 that year could see a tax bill increase of $1,135 and then go down every year until the project is paid for some 25 years plus later.
Okay, thanks. Well, as we said at the beginning, our goal is to try to answer as many questions as might be out there when it comes to the cost and funding of this project. Hopefully, this short presentation has done that, but if you still have questions or concerns, there are a lot of ways for you to interact with us. The first and most important one is we have a community forum coming up on April 4th. It's going to be a virtual forum, and the link to that virtual forum will be available on the town website, the school website, and various other places. The ESBC will continue to meet over the spring and summer to make design decisions, and we'll be having additional community forums to solicit input. We'll also be having forums and design sessions with faculty, staff, and students as we go through this, all on track for a special town meeting for project approval in November of 2023. You can also interact with us directly. The easiest way is to go to our website at elmwoodproject.com, and that has a link where you can send an email with any questions to the ESBC. I want to thank my fellow committee members for joining this presentation, and hopefully it answered a lot of the questions that the community may have, and thank you all for watching.
Hi, my name is Danielle Cook. I'm the Adult Services Librarian at the Hopkinton Public Library, and I'm here with my colleague Jack Miller, our teen librarian. We're here to invite you to join us for our reading marathon.
For our reading marathon, simply log 26 hours of reading or other activities in minute increments, and then you'll be able to join us from our trip from Hopkinton to Boston, reading the whole way. Visit our website to sign up for a registration link as well as more details.
At the Hopkinton Public Schools, safety is our first priority. Our students need to feel that they are safe before they can begin learning and growing. As part of our commitment to safety and security, people who need to conduct business at our schools should go to the main entrance, press the buzzer, and explain the purpose of your visit. Wait to be admitted and do not hold the door for those behind you. Other than the main entrance, all other entrances are locked for security.
The Sustainable Green Committee is a group of 15 people working hard to help Hopkinton address the serious environmental issues facing us. We develop plans and practical solutions to help save not only our special slice of the planet, but also help save residents, businesses, and municipal organizations money. Double green power. This includes a municipal aggregation plan so our electricity comes from green supplies, a climate action plan to help us meet the state's net zero carbon emissions target, and so much more. We also provide useful information on green topics. Our website, hopgreen.org, aims to be a one-stop spot for links to some of the best resources out there on solar, EVs, waste reduction, heating, and safe natural resource management. Our social media and email lists help to keep anyone who wants to be informed about everything we're doing, as well as the latest green news. We're always looking for help, so contact us if you'd like to work on this important mission. Thank you.
This is Kathy Young. Our family has lived in Hopkinton for about 8 years. So a couple of years ago, my kid pushed me to do the home composting. And I reluctant doing so because of the too much extra work. Of course, I got the lectures from my kid and we started doing it. And I'm really surprised that how much trash has been reduced just by simply doing the composting. 2/3 of my trash were gone. Since then, I got into learning about and advocating for the sustainability, and I joined the Sustainable Green Committee to work alongside others, contributing into all these aspects. So I was really inspired by the new generation and welcome more young people join the efforts.